give a moment for Dee to get in and Julie to get in. I see Nick's in. Rich and Barb, how is life in Alabama?
They're on mute.
It's muted. Oh, we can't hear you, but it's okay. Yeah, good to see y'all.
Dee's in the room now, and we're waiting on Julie.
Yeah. This Zoom gets complicated sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sorry about that. However that happened.
Glad you made it.
it. It wasn't me.
There's Diane. Hi, Diane.
I'm sorry, I'm in a dark room.
Hi, Dan.
Hi, everybody. I turned the lights down for the circadian rhythm. We are unmuted.
I think we're unmuted now.
Yep.
You are.
I would try to.
No.
Hi, Martha.
Hi, honey. All right, Ron. Everybody's here when you're ready.
Okay, let's start over.
Recording in progress.
We begin by sharing general impressions about grieving before becoming more specific about my personal experience. Everyone's grief is unique. There is no one pattern. Grief is tough to describe because it's a mass of thoughts, emotions, and experiences. And some of those emotions might include sadness, guilt, anger, loneliness, shock, numbness, even uncertainty and confusion. A lot of experiences can bring grief, including a divorce, job loss, a major health challenge, but I'll be referring mostly to the death of a loved one. You never really recover from grief because that implies things get back to normal, and things will never be normal again in the sense of having your loved one back. But you can take charge of your grief. It can be an opportunity for profound personal growth. There is no timetable for grief. The loss is never something you get over, but you can observe over time the pain subside, and you can find yourself moving ahead into new opportunities and experiences. Because your grief is unique, you can express this grief in your own way. So I encourage you to feel free to experience your grief your way and not to assume that somebody else has got it right and that's the way you need to do it. No. But I do encourage you not to be dismissive about grieving. I admit that I was dismissive of it for a long time. I've experienced some degree of grieving over the loss of both of my parents, my older brother, two older sisters, and a large number of family members and friends. But it was nothing like what I've experienced with dear Lenore's passing. But however you treat grief, I encourage you not to be dismissive of it. Don't be surprised at ups and downs when you're grieving. But knowing that you will have good days and bad days helps you to anticipate the changes that you're likely to feel. Ignore if you hear some people say you can get on with your life or you can put this behind you or other insensitive remarks, because sometimes well-intentioned friends are really not savvy about the grief experience. Grief doesn't end, rather, you decide how you'll deal with it. If your spouse or partner had a long-term illness, don't be surprised if you feel an element of relief when that person passes on. And this can bring guilt But I encourage you not to judge yourself on that. Go easy on yourself because these can be heavy duty challenges. So be kind to yourself in the midst of grief. Know that you have a lot of company, even though that doesn't make it any easier. It is so important to embrace your memories that uplift you, that make you smile, that warm your heart. Because you can find that these help to sustain you. And you do so without focusing on the past. No, that's not it. It's focusing on those areas that make your heart light. You may find help in a grief support group or counseling, and if you're so inclined, I would encourage you to do so. Certain writings may be helpful, including those of Helen Steiner Rice, Ralph Waldo Emerson, John Greenleaf Whittier. Know that there is life beyond loss. While no one would ever choose to repeat the circumstances that brought about the changes, countless people who are grieving report real growth in the midst of grief. Positive change and personal growth can certainly be yours. The psychiatrist Elizabeth Kubler-Ross taught that there are 5 stages to grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. That was not at all my experience. I experienced hardly any of those. And in fact, most grief counselors these days discount these 5 stages of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. My experience instead has been a long period of adjustment, and this adjustment goes on. And a key to that adjustment is memories. And one vivid memory for me was when we left Austin, and at that time when I had accepted a position at Renaissance Unity, and Lenore told me, this is my place to retire. I'm not going to be doing any more church work. So I said, fine. She wanted to come back to Michigan, be with her sons and her children, her mother, support her mother, and she did that. But within a couple of years, the situation had changed, and we were called upon to start up what is now 15 years of Spiritual Life Center. And Lenore doesn't hesitate. She jumped right in, and she was in the midst of being there every Sunday, reaching out to people, supporting people, and her wonderful meditations continued to support Spiritual Life Center and still do. And she provided these meditations within a year of her passing. So she was willing to shift gears. She was willing to change up and to do what she felt called upon to do, to support me, to support the people that she loved. I'm going to ask you, Martha, to bring up slide 1, which is both a picture of dear Lenore. That is a picture. Larry took that picture just a year before she passed in April of 2023. And this is really something. You know, when Lenore moved on, one key memory is a few months before that time, she had a premonition. And one evening we were sitting at the couch and she said, I'd like to talk to you. And I said, fine. She said, I'm not going to be around much longer, and you will be free. And I'm so glad she raised that, because it was clear to me that she thought she was being a burden. And I said, Lenore, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't want to be free. I want you. I want you and I to be together all of our days. And she seemed surprised. And we held hands. And I just have always felt so grateful that she had the courage to raise that, because otherwise she would have gone on thinking that she was a burden, and I didn't want to be there. I wanted to be with somebody else, which was crazy. That was never true. There's also another picture of you're on the island in the kitchen. You know, some people have a person's room be the same, their clothes be there, all their items be there. But I, with Jim and Marcy, Jim's partner, Marcy's help, had her, they took her clothes and her costume jewelry, which she always loved, both of those. And she had such beautiful clothes and such beautiful items, jewelry, and we offered them to all her loved ones. And a lot of people, mainly women, but men as well, took items. And we sent them to the people out of town, took pictures of them, and had them distributed, and even some of the clothing of people, of Lenore's. And the rest were taken to a consignment shop that continues to move them. They provided several $100s. But the one thing I did leave the same was the island in the kitchen. And this is what the island looks like. It's a little memorial, and it feels right to me. I don't know how long I'll leave it that way for right now. I just like it there. It feels comfortable. I have her picture around in various places, but whatever works for you is what is right. And there's another picture that we're going to share of a lanyard that, I think that's slide number 2, Martha. And this particular lanyard was something that Lenore saw a year or two before she passed on. She saw it on a woman in the dining room, and she wanted to ask the woman about it, and she did. And she really seemed interested and asked if there was any way we could find it. So I located it at the bookstore of Temple, Israel, and got it for her. And she really enjoyed this lanyard. And we have name tags at Fox Run, and that's what I have my name tag on right now, because somehow it just makes me feel closer to her when I wear that lanyard. One of the things that I found when I was digging in was all the writing that Lenore had done. There is a booklet like this that she wrote, and I found 3 books like this going back 30, 40 years. This particular book she did while we were not in ministerial school, in Austin. This was written in 2005, and she had a long letter to God that went on several pages. And something that touches my heart is, in the midst of it, she said she's talking to God personally, and she said, "You brought Ron into my life and blessed me with his love and caring, his encouragement, affirmation, and tenderness." I can't tell you what that means to me to read that over. I read it over dozens of times, and I carry a version of it with me. When we were in Austin, shortly after Lenore's passing, the people in Austin invited me down there, and I went down for this service on a Sunday, which was the 29th anniversary of the startup of the church in November. And that's slide 4. And in that one, we were after the service where I spoke on a Sunday morning. There were people went outside with me, and I scattered her remaining ashes on the tree outside her office, what had been her office, which is right next to the prayer chapel behind there, which is next to a lot of people. And she loved that office, and it was very special. There's another picture of me that is in there of scattering the ashes that you might find as well, Martha. But in addition, beyond the memories, this time of adjustment includes 7 facets that I consider. And these 7 facets are, first, a centeredness on my spiritual path, which has been central to my moving through this time. Connecting with and calling upon God regularly, maintaining an awareness of my attitude, a focus on service, loving others, practice to the best of my ability, kindness, acceptance, compassion, openness, humility, and being of service. In checking through all these writings, which I was surprised to see, one writing which was when Lenore was in ministerial school, which was back 35 years ago, almost 30 years ago. And in there, she had written 9 pages, and I've typed it up since. And a copy of this is available for anyone who doesn't have it. If you want it, just let us know and we'll send it to you. But she writes, life is a sculptor. Life loves to paint the picture of God's idea of you on the canvas of your selfhood. Life needs you just as the artist needs a canvas, brushes, and colors. Life is the sculptor. You are the marble. The sculptor sees with imagination the angel within the rough marble block and skillfully brings it forth. He loves his tools, his mallet, his chisel, and the marble. They enable him to create, to express, and to fulfill himself, even to complete himself. Life, the sculptor, loves you, sees the perfection in you, and is shaping you with infinite patience to be as beautiful as God's image should be. And then she has 7 pages of I pray for your happiness, with a full page of prayers for your happiness. I pray for your guidance on a separate page. I pray for your protection. I pray for your prosperity. I pray for you to be comforted. I pray for your healing, and I pray for your freedom. And all of these are written so beautifully, and it's a reminder to me of just what a masterful spiritual teacher she was. I told her when we were in Austin, we took turns doing the messages every other Sunday, and she was always my favorite speaker. And she was just an amazing presenter of an outstanding Sunday message, and people loved it as much as I did. When she got the news that she should be going into hospice care, she turned to me and said, "I'm at peace." And she said that more than once to Jim and Larry and myself, as in those last 11 days when she was at home, that she was, and she loved being at home instead of being in the hospital. That was a blessing. So the first was centeredness on the spiritual path, which she was such a marvelous teacher of. The second facet is welcoming support. The support that I've received from God, from our personal family, from our spiritual family, from our neighbors, our friends. And for neighbors, I see that Linda Simonelli is there, who lives right upstairs here. And Linda was also at the memorial for dear Lenore as well. And this support has just been incredible, and it has sustained me. It's important, I believe, I've experienced, to allow alone time, but it's also good to be active, even in small ways, to enjoy small things. And I find it important to focus on what's closest to you. I'm very careful of my watching of TV and on any social media. I hardly do that at all on social media. And when I watch the news, I scan it. I'm aware of what's going on, but I don't get into it in a major way at all. The advice of focus on what's closest to you rather than on the national political scene or something like that, I find so personally important. A third facet is gratitude. One of the first connections that I had with Lenore after her passing was a real surprise. Several weeks after her passing, I was feeling very down. And all of a sudden, I had a message that came to me that I wrote down. And this message was, we can both focus on gratitude for our wonderful years together and for the great things that came of it. I caught my breath. And I did focus on that. And all of a sudden, I wasn't feeling down again. And so I focused on that. And then about a month later, I was driving along in the car and the same thing. I was feeling really sad. And it came to me again. We can both focus on gratitude for the wonderful years we had together and for the great things that came of it. All of a sudden I did. And for the second time, a month later, I forget where I was, but same thing. And it happened. And finally I said, okay, I've got the idea. You're getting through to me now. I'm going to, as soon as I start to feel down, I'm going to focus on gratitude. And sure enough, it always pulls me out. And in grieving, I've grieved emotionally. I've allowed the tears to be. It's important to do that. I'm grateful for so many things. I started to list the things that we had done in the 9 months before her passing. And I stopped when I got up to 21. There were more, but there were so many that I thought, what a blessing this is. I mean, there was Larry coming on a couple of trips from Colorado and bringing his family members with him as well. There was all the times that Jim and Marcy would come over and take Lenore to an exercise class, to a boxing for Parkinson's class, or take her back to see the puppies at their home. There was the time on Christmas Day when it was our 40th wedding anniversary, last Christmas, the Christmas of 2023. And I dug out the DVD of our Christmas service that Jack Boland had performed. And we played it and held hands. And I'll tell you, that is something I reflect on and I am so grateful for. that we had that time together and that we had that 40 years together. And I'm grateful that 6 years ago, we were not able to travel after 2018. But we did have a trip to celebrate her 75th birthday at that time. And the trip was to the Danube River on a river cruise, but it's also to go to Poland for the last 3 days, where both of her grandparents had emigrated from more than a century ago. And we had a tour guide that took us around to find places, and it was just wonderful. And I'm so grateful that we had that opportunity to share that time together. I'm grateful for her personal inventory class that we have presented from the church, and she was able to see herself again 35 years later. She gave that incredible class where people gave her a standing ovation, and Jack introduced her as saying, have you ever met a miracle? Well, let me introduce you to a miracle. And he talked about Lenore. And she got up and says wonderful things afterwards. And she was just such a presenter of that class. I mean, to have the DVD of that, and we'll present it again to the people of the church because it's just as powerful now as it was then. I'm so grateful that in that last week, I think it was probably the last day that she would have been able to do this. She wasn't able to speak the last few days, but her eyes were open until they weren't. And at one point, I said, I love you so. And she mouthed back to me, I love you so. And I'll never forget that. It just touches my heart. There's so many things that are just special. Well, that's the third facet. The first one is being centered spiritually. The second is support, receiving and accepting the support from others. The third, gratitude for all kinds of things. And the fourth is discovery. I have discovered more of her items, her writings, than I ever knew existed. Journals, letters, notes, pictures. I want to read something to you that was so special that I came across. I had no idea. This was written in 2005 because in the same writing she said that my mother is a certain age today, which means she would have been that age in 2005. And this is an obituary that Lenore wrote. Lenore wrote her own obituary almost 20 years before her passing. And she wrote, we are gathered here to honor the spirit of Lenore Scott. All of you that have known her have come here because you have been touched in some way by her genuine love for you. In her own life, she was always looking for ways to become a better person, to change self-defeating habits, to have greater understanding of herself, and was always open to God using her as a channel for the love and acceptance of others. She especially loved to take a hurting heart, a person feeling left out, and draw them close with a look, a word, a gentle touch. She never believed in a bad person, only in a confused and hurting one. Lenore could be proud of the way she brought up her 3 sons. They are gentle souls who are grown into competent, caring men. She always conducted herself in a responsible manner, doing what needed to be done. She was childlike in her appreciation and wonder at the beauty of nature and a delight in simple pleasures. Some of the most peaceful, productive years of her life were spent with her husband, Ron, in an exceptionally warm relationship that flourished with love and total acceptance of each other. Whatever her stage in life, she gave it her all. She was committed to overcoming poverty, addictive patternings, and low self-esteem. For many years, she dedicated herself to raising her 3 sons. When the time came, she stepped back and let them go one by one, knowing that her teaching days were over and all she could be was an example to them, because in the end, they know they are God's children and needed to be free to walk their own walk. Bob, the eldest son, will miss his mother, but her memory will live on through him in the way he is conducting his life. Larry's heart will always be filled with the belief his mother had in his many artistic talents, and Jim's life will always be touched in a special way because of the unrelenting love and understanding she gave him over the many years. Her heart is at peace in knowing that through thick and thin, she gave it her all and then gave them the freedom to be. Lenore's work in the church, especially in getting the cassette ministry organized, will have far-reaching effects long after she is gone. Her loyalty to Jack Boland and his ministry was a pillar during the many years of the church's growth. Her sharing what she so generously received has aided many persons to believe in themselves and improve the quality of their life. Knowing how many challenges we face in life, if she could think of one last message, it might be do something. Even if it's wrong, just do something. And if she could come back and do something differently, it would be to trust and let go sooner instead of holding on until it got painful. And amazing. I also found in this same book something that she had written out when she was in her early 60s, which was a 5-year segment starting from 0 to 5 years of age, and then 5 to 10 years, 10 to 15, and so on. And she wrote out dozens of items that she recalled of events, of experiences that happened to her. And it's just amazing that she was able to recall all of this. And it's really something her boys have looked at it and treasure it as I do. So that's the fourth facet, discovery. A fifth is connectedness. And I encourage anyone who has a loved one who moves on to ask for signs of your loved one's presence and be on the lookout for these coming into your experience. I mentioned about the experience that I know Lenore was communicating to me about, that message of we can both focus on gratitude. But there's another one that Martha's going to show us in slide 7. And this was when we were scattering Lenore's ashes back this past summer, most of her ashes, and we did most of them at the cemetery where her parents and her grandparents were buried. But we also went to her home where she grew up. And in the backyard, we asked David, her brother, who lives there now and owns the home, if we could scatter ashes there. And he said, let's do it on my mother's rose bush. And so we have a picture. Here is the roses. You can see the ashes down at the bottom, and there's no blooms on it whatsoever. David sent me a picture the next day, and this picture the next day, you'll see the effect of those ashes being scattered. And while Martha's finding that, I'll tell you another one, which was that I was standing at the door one day. Yeah, this was the next day, the picture of that same rose bush. See that beautiful blossom? All that one day later. And then there was another slide 8, which is something that I had never seen, but here it was right after her passing. It was on a tree in the front of our home. And on that tree, there is what looks to me to be a heart. And this is a heart that was never there before. It's still there. And I believe it was Angel Lenore making that heart appear to us. There was another one that came up where I was, and I don't have a picture of this because I just stared, but a few weeks after her passing, I looked out my door window, and this was in the spring, and the flowers had been planted, and here was a beautiful doe that was standing there staring at the door wall. And I went over to the door wall and I stared back, and that doe stood there for a full minute. And I said, Lenore, is that you staring at me through that doe? And there was after a minute, there was a graceful movement of the doe through the flowers and off into the distance. And I've had 15 or 20 items like that. One time, more than one time in bed, I have heard the sound that she used to make. And I've said, Lenore, is that you? And it's not a word, but it's just a sound. I said, Lenore, is that you? And one time I even looked over and I thought I saw her head on the pillow. And, these things just amazing. Well, then the next one after connectedness is phase 5, facet 5, and the sixth one is humor. It's so important to keep a light heart in the midst of this and to look for these opportunities for the humor. And I'll tell you, I look back on so many items. We're kind of short on time, so I'm just going to tell you one, but it's one that it was a highlight in my life. And that was back when, after I first met Lenore, and she was working at Church of Today for Jack Olin, and part of her responsibilities was to get people to and from the airport. She did so for Reverend, what's his name? The one from New York, Norman Vincent Peale, and his wife. We drove them, and usually I would be the one doing the driving, but she also did one with what's her name? The singer. I can't think of her name now, but Lenore got lost in the middle of it. And this singer woman was funny. She was saying, do you know where you're going? and they finally got there. But her responsibility was to get Agmandino to and from the airport. And Agmandino had come for more than a dozen years regularly. He'd come a couple times a year. And after a couple of years after Lenore and I were seeing one another, we were seeing one another regularly, but we had never talked about sharing a life together. And when we were going to the airport, we walked Agmandino over to the gate, and he was on his way out to the plane, and he was out some distance, and he yelled, "If you let her get away, you've got rocks in your head." And yeah, I was stunned. I mean, what do you say to something like that? I couldn't ignore the statement, but I didn't have any idea how I should respond. So I stupidly turned to Lenore and said, "That was nice." And she didn't say anything. That was the last we talked about it. But later that year, we were married. He was predicting. And there are so many other, humor is so important, and keeping a light heart. And then finally, the seventh facet is reflection. Reflecting on hope, on living with purpose, on allowing yourself to move on. At the same time, you carry your memories and your loving heart with you. And I'm going to take a pause here and see if anyone wants to share anything or have any questions. I've got a couple other things I wanted to talk about, but anyone want to unmute and say anything? You can just raise your hand and Martha will unmute you.
Mary Jane, go ahead, honey.
There. Okay. Lenore was just really amazing for me. I was coming to the Spiritual Life Center because someone had asked me to come there, and I was kind of not too sure if I was going to stay or whatever. And one day I came in late as usual, and as I had to wait in the vestibule to let her finish her meditation. And something she said in the meditation, I can't even remember what it was, but it was like the aha moment for me. And I said, yep, this is where I belong. And it kind of changed my life. And I always love her meditations. I come away feeling so much better. So she's been a real gift to me in my life.
Thank you, Precious.
Martha, as people are thinking if they want to share anything, I know that you have a something that you wanted to get a little message from Lenore.
I've got two things. Here is a dove that is in the Unity Worldwide headquarters at Unity Village, what was formerly Unity Village Chapel, that's now a multi-million-dollar Goppert Center for the arts. And I and others contributed to this, and we bought, this is a glass dove etched. This doesn't do it justice, but it's hanging there in the foyer, in the lobby there, that says, honoring Reverends Lenore and Ron Scott. And I did this months and months ago, and I just got this picture today. That's confirmation of it there. So I felt like it was a visit. And if you're out there, and when I get out there in person, I'll video what's actually out there and send it and do it more justice than this, so that you can see how this looks stunning on a wall with hundreds of these that they used as part of the fundraising to make this possible. And then I've been blessed that something just guided me to keep certain voicemails that I had from people, and I particularly prayed with and for Lenore every single day, as I do Ron. And this is a message. I hope you can hear it.
Calling, thank
Bear
you
with
for the
me.
many, many ways that you.
She may be pranking me.
Hi, Martha. This is Lenore, and I'm calling to thank you for the many, many ways that you just bring a smile to my face. And I just want to tell you that that candy was delicious, but just everything about you is delicious. I look forward to talking to you. I know. My number is 248-925.
Everything about me is delicious. Everything about Reverend Lenore Scott was delicious. And I'm especially blessed that whatever put us together did so, especially at the time that we came together. So she has a very, very dear, eternal part of my heart. And she gave Hadlin this little purse. I think, Marcy, you probably took her out shopping for it. That's got 2 hearts in it that we got at the picnic up there that summer. And she had made her this whole bag full of goodies, Hadlin, my little great niece. And in that little tiny purse, 2 little hearts in it. And that's still on my altar. And I removed one of those hearts and brought it back to Reverend Ron when I was up there, so that he's got that piece of what she offered us, that he's got a piece of that there for his altar as well. So I don't have words to say what she means to me. And that obituary, I hope somebody could read that and put my name on it. And that could be mine as well. Minus the children. Y'all can keep the kids and raising boys and all that. I don't want any of that. Besides that. Yeah.
That's wonderful. You know, the highlight for me of the Sunday morning services is her meditation. And we have so many of her meditations recorded, thanks to Nick, that we changed them up. And we'll always have her meditations, and I just listen to them, and they're so powerful and so beautiful. And she always has. They were a highlight for people, and they are for me. They continue to be. One other thing I forgot to mention on a connection, Julie, who was always very close to Lenore, a highlight of Lenore's week would be going out to shop with Julie. But Julie talked about having a couple of dreams not long after Lenore passed. And in these dreams, Lenore told her that we would all be back together again. And I have no doubt that that is so. And anything else you wanted to share, Julie?
Well, I continue to have dreams. And a period, like, I don't know, every month or so, where Lenore and I are together, and it's just like it always was. We always had such an easy relationship and a fun relationship. And in the dreams, we're just, it's like we're still together. I mean, we're walking and talking and laughing and having fun. And I'm always happy. I always wake up happy when after she's visited me in my dreams.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of dreams, in my message for this coming Sunday, one segment of it will include a dream that changed Lenore's life, and she talked to me about it, and she later talked to her friend Patty Murphy Hole, about it. And Patty said, "Oh, that's a spiritual dream." And then she was on the lookout for what she should be aware of about this dream. So I talk about it in the message this coming Sunday. I have told people that I am just so optimistic and feel so good about life. And someone might say to me, how can you believe that when just last year your beloved Lenore was taken from you? And to understand this clearly requires you to see it from my place. Yes, I miss Lenore terribly. And from an earthly perspective, her being gone is a great loss, yet I have such a profound connection with her spirit. And I know with certainty that we will be together again in the divine realm, that she is my soulmate. I've even had several dreams where I am flying all over, unencumbered by the limitations of a body. But beyond this, there is a vivid awareness that this past year, all sorts of positive things have happened and continue to happen to me and for other of Lenore's loved ones. Positive experiences and unfoldings for her sons. Each of her sons is doing very, very well, has wonderful things happening in their lives. For her brothers as well, for her grandchildren. One grandson who's had an addictive problem has been now over a year clean and sober and is working at a Salvation Army and is loving life again. Another granddaughter has a new job and is loving it and doing very well and has been complimented and promoted. Another granddaughter is in her senior year of high school and is in a choir and singing and performing and is looking forward to a wonderful future. Another granddaughter is pregnant with her second baby. A grandson is a ninja warrior and has started up a new business and is doing well. Her stepchildren, Julie and Mike, are doing well. And in addition to that, Spiritual Life Center is doing so well. Martha has observed, as I have observed, new insights, new messages are coming to each one of us in ways that were not so a year or more ago. And I believe, and Martha believes too, that this is totally because Angel Lenore is behind the scenes working with God to bring blessings to us, to the church. So in truth, there is no reason for me to feel depressed, but rather enlivened, knowing that dear Lenore is in the midst of promoting the divine order of the universe to work on the behalf of us all. Anything else anyone would like to share? Well, this has been recorded, so it will be on our YouTube for anyone who wants to watch it again or to have a friend or a loved one watch it. Anything else you want to share, Martha, before we close?
My sincere thanks. I'm so honoring of you for you to take the time to do this. The privilege that I have to walk this journey with you, and how relieved I am that to hear you speak, somebody I absolutely respect and admire so much, to encourage others to stop dismissing grief and to absolutely awaken to its power, spiritual, emotional, transformational power. And your time and effort here spent in leading and teaching like you have for decades, that you would do it again for any of us that have not taken our trip around this mulberry bush. And I love you for it, and I thank you. And for every one of you that are here, how special you are and were to Lenore. And I know she has her own special connections with you. And it's an honor for me to share in being any part of this extended family here.
Love you, Martha. Thank you.
Yeah. And for any of you listening to this, you're welcome to our teachings, what comes through us at the Spiritual Life Center on this same YouTube channel. And any way we can support you, ministry or otherwise, you're welcome to get directly in touch with us.
Blessings to you, everybody.
Thank you,